Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs, and I'm Raquel, Okyay, your host, and my special guest today is Yehuda Remer. Yehuda Remer and I met on Facebook, and I noticed that Yehuda has a lot of opinions and a good background on Second Amendment. In fact, he has written children's books about education and safety, which I think is awesome. So I want to go ahead and talk about that first. If you can tell us a little bit about your background, Yehuda, and how you got involved with writing books about education and safety for children.
Yeah. So I grew up in Los Angeles, an Orthodox Jew. So growing up, I always thought I was a Democrat because, you know, all Jews are Democrats. Or at least that's what you're led to believe. And I grew up in an apolitical home where firearms were never talked about or never even discussed. And when I was about 23 years old, I started learning about the Constitution, started actually paying attention to politics around me. And I realized that, you know, not only am I not a Democrat, I'm not even a Republican. I'm a 3% Tea Party, right wing, you know, as conservative as they come. And a buddy of mine, exactly.
I like that.
And a buddy of mine called me up one day, and he's like, "Hey, you know, let's go shooting." And I had gone shooting before, but never really. I hadn't gone in years. So we went to this range, and my buddy was like, right out of a movie. It's like he takes out this case and he like unfolds it, and there's like gun. And I'm like, dude, who are you? Like, I've known you for years. Who are you with all these guns? And he's like, well, they're mine. I'm like, what do you mean they're yours? And I didn't realize that a civilian was allowed to own a firearm for, you know, self-defensive purposes, really.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because I said I grew up in an apolitical home. I was completely just, I guess, sheltered to the fact. And I went shooting with him, and he started opening my eyes to the Second Amendment. I started studying it, started really paying attention to it, and before long, I wrote my first. I apologize. I bought my first firearm, and
Okay.
after that, I kind of got gun fever. So it went from a handgun to an AR-15 to a shotgun very quickly, and I didn't tell my parents. I was married, out of the house, with 2 kids, but I still didn't tell my parents because, you know, you always hear about that Jewish mother guilt, and I just did not want that hanging over me at all. I didn't need my parents hounding me about it, especially growing up in an apolitical family.
Even though they were apolitical, you knew that they had just a disinterest or something against firearms, as if it was something dangerous or negative.
Yes, because it was never talked about, and just knowing who my parents are, anything that is even could be considered remotely dangerous in any manner, it's like a big no. Like, don't, always play it safe, and
Okay.
you know, that's something that I grew up with. But as I got older, I'm like, well, that's not normal. You can't live your life that way. I mean, you could, but you're never really going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and you know, and the world is a dangerous place.
Exactly.
So you want to make sure that you have the capacity to protect yourself in whatever matter. Whoops.
No, 100%, and that led me to kind of a bit of a self-discovery. You know, Jews always have that saying, "Never again," but I took it one step further. I said, "Look, never again means nothing if you're not willing to do something about it." So you can say, I'm anti-gun. I don't want to have guns in the house. I don't want to deal with them. But at the end of the day, if you don't want another Holocaust to happen, you need to do something about it. And that includes being able to arm yourself and defend you, your family, your friends, your neighbors, in case anything happens.
Right.
So it was one night, my younger brother, who always likes to ruin my life, that's what young brothers do.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of let slip that I owned a Glock, and in front of my parents.
Uh-oh, that is serious.
Yeah, we were just like having dinner, like every Wednesday night, me, my wife, and my kids, we would go to my parents' house for dinner, and we're sitting there, and you know, my brother's like, "Hey, so when can I go shoot your Glock?" And my parents are like, "You own a gun?" And I was like, "No." And then I was like, "Wait, how do you guys know what a Glock is?" And they're like,
Yeah, really.
"We see it in all the movies." I'm like, "All right, yeah." So I own a gun, and then my parents went crazy. I mean, they were yelling at me how
Oh gosh.
irresponsible for having a firearm with kids in the home. You know, they can't believe me. They raised me better than that. Everything I tried avoiding, just it was like Niagara Falls, just came piling down.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's like slow motion. You're like,
yeah.
no.
Exactly.
You're like,
And
relive in your teenage years. No.
yeah, I mean, again, at this point, I was already like 28 years old, living out of the house, working, 2 kids,
Right.
and it kind of started bothering me that over the next few weeks, my parents just kind of didn't stop hounding me. Like they were shocked that their child owned a firearm.
Gotcha.
So it took me a second. I was like, hey, how am I able to educate my children so that they understand that guns are just a tool, nothing more? And I need a book about safety. So, of course, the first place you go look is the NRA, and they have the Eddie Eagle program, which is great. But all the Eddie Eagle program touches on is what to do if you find a gun somewhere it's not supposed to be.
Okay.
You have the Project
And
Child.
safety all safety kind of manual.
Right, exactly. And then I went to a couple other organizations, but there was nothing on the market that a parent can read to a child as almost a I don't want to call it a bedtime story, but a book that you can just sit on the couch, cuddle up with your little ones, and educate them on gun safety.
Gotcha.
I did tons of research. I mean, I went to every library I can think of. I checked on every Amazon and every page, and there was nothing. So I set out to write a book called Safety On, and it's an introduction to the world of firearms for children. And I have a good buddy of mine who was in the LAPD, who he was the one that taught me to shoot. So I wrote the whole book in about 20 minutes, and I sent it to him. And
So how many pages is the book? Does it have photos? What is the age group?
the age group is for ages 6 to 10. And
Okay.
it's easy enough that a child who's just learning to read, 6, 7 years old, just learning to read, that it's easy enough for them to sit down and read it alone. But at
Okay.
the same time, it's not baby enough that it's not too babyish where a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old would get bored of it.
Okay. I think it's an interesting topic for kids. So I think they'd be interested to hear, what's the thing, what's the thing about firearms. I think it's very, very good because maybe, public school education, at the very least, they do put out this very negative connotation towards guns. So even including like their rules include, no talking, no chewing gum, and sort of like your regular rules in the classroom, and then it's no guns. Sort of like, where does that come from? Of course, you're not having actually firearms in the classroom, but things are lopsided when it comes to education, especially when it comes to children. So I think it's absolutely fantastic that you wrote these books. And I want to know, what kind of feedback did you get?
So nearly all the feedback was pretty positive. I did get a few, you're going to get them no matter where you go, some haters out there who, you can tell who they voted for and where they really stand in life by their Facebook profiles after they lambasted me for writing a horrific book about gun safety. But, to the most part, it's been pretty good. I did have some friends of mine who are in the industry who made some criticisms of the book, but after I explained to them why I did what I did in the book, they're like, okay, that actually makes perfect sense. Like an example would be at one point in the book, so the book quickly is told through the eyes of a little boy who wants to be like his father.
Okay.
So it's more of a peer-to-peer conversation with a child rather than a adult telling a child, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So it gives it a little more, it's a little more relatable to the
Right.
reader. So one example is I talked about how, the boy's father has a bunch of different color guns, and green ones, black ones, and then my mom has a pink one. And a good friend of mine, she called me up. She's like, she goes, I'm not really offended by it, but it could be maybe a little degrading to women that you automatically assume that all women want a pink gun. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying. I said, but what you need to understand is, in today's day and age, you can go to nearly any gun store and buy a pink gun. A child has to understand that guns do come in different colors. Not all guns are black. So if you see a gun that might be pink, it could be a real gun, and you have to take the proper safety protocols in dealing with that type of gun too. And when I explained to her that thought process, how there are, a rainbow of guns out there, she's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. That makes perfect sense. So, but to the most part, it's been very positive feedback. I've tried constantly trying to get a copy of the book to Shannon Watts and Mom's Demand Action and for Gun Sense.
Yeah. How's that going?
I was blocked by her. One of the many people who've been blocked by her. But I think if they want Gun Sense, this is a great idea. And unfortunately, they haven't picked it up yet. But I'm hoping to keep on trolling them a little more. So.
I see their campaign as a fear campaign. So the idea that they don't want to educate kids or even train kids or even just have a positive conversation about firearms and the Second Amendment, which is really our history. It's our American history. The fact that it seems like they're afraid to put out the truth. And as long as we keep putting out the truth, which I think is very logical. It's very logical. In my opinion, it's a God-given right. It's not because the Constitution says so. We have a right to defend ourselves in any manner that we choose, really, against imminent harm. Really, anybody at any time in history needs that advantage because it could be the criminal in your area, or it could be your despotic government. As you said, just touched on earlier with respect to the Holocaust. Hitler had to disarm the Jews, and that was part and parcel to taking over, controlling, and because at some point, people defend. It's a natural component. You want to defend yourself. At the very last second, your life is in danger. You're going to defend yourself in whatever manner you can, and that includes shooting. So the idea that a despotic government has to disarm you is very, very clear, and that's clear in history. So stop, stop trying to disarm us. We can have it for safety, for our family, against our government, against criminals, because they exist. Evil in the world exists. I don't like it. I don't participate. I try not to participate in it. But if someone comes to my house, or I'm in public somewhere and someone is a threat to the public, and I'm there protecting myself and my family, I should be able to have the right to protect myself. And it is, it is the Second Amendment. It is the law of the land.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, it's not just a despotic government. I mean, look, you just had, what was it, yesterday or the day before in Venezuela, there was just mass executions. After, what is it, like 8 years ago, they banned guns from gun ownership there. And I didn't get into the article because I've just been crazy running around the last couple of days, but something along those lines. But, I tell people,
check it out.
It's not just, do I think it's going to happen in America? I mean, I really don't think it's going to happen in America, but I don't want to take that risk. And I don't want to go to bed at night being completely unarmed, that if someone breaks into my house, I'm going to grab a baseball bat when the guy's coming with a gun. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So like you said, the Second Amendment is a God-given right. It's not something that the government bestowed upon us, and they're not allowed to take it away from us.
Right. And it's enshrined in the law too, and I do think that the founding fathers made the Second Amendment for a reason, and a lot of founding fathers, said it's liberty's teeth. They construed it as without the Second Amendment, almost all of our liberties it makes us vulnerable. I don't think that, our government is going to do anything like that anytime soon either. But in the event that they do, you always want to have that protection. And then again, it's for yourself. It's a personal protection for your home. Your home is your castle. You protect yourself, and you protect yourself in however means you can. And you don't show up to a gunfight with a knife.
Very true. We learned that from Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right. I remember that movie.
Great scene.
So I want to hear so you're kind of on the right. You told me you're a Ben Shapiro follower. So I want to hear your opinion about Donald Trump. I asked my last guest this last week, Eric Royce. I want to know what you think about the president and whether he's owned up to some of the promises that he's made on the campaign trail. And that is to support the Second Amendment, on a federal level to the extent that he can. So he can't write laws, but he can certainly be a bully pulpit. And, there's other ways to support the Second Amendment on the federal level, which Donald Trump has gotten, I think, from my friends, mixed reviews. So I want to hear what your opinion is.
So overall, okay, I will readily admit I was not a Donald Trump supporter from the get-go. I didn't vote for him. I had zero interest in him becoming our president.
Okay.
That said, if elections were tomorrow, based on his track record so far, I would vote for him. I would vote for him now. He didn't.
Interesting. Okay.
He didn't really give me a real reason to vote for him. I didn't like the way he campaigned. I didn't like the way, accusing Ted Cruz's father of being complicit in the Kennedy assassination. I mean, there were some things that it just so over the top. I'm like, you want to bring an intelligent argument, let's do it. But to do stuff like that, it just was a big turnoff. But again, like I said, based on things he's been doing now, I would vote for him. In terms of the Second Amendment, he definitely has. I mean, I know the big thing in the Second Amendment world has been a big push to repeal the National Firearms Act, and also more than that, even right now, is to get national reciprocity passed. I know that's a very big one because, I have friends who, there's that woman, Shanine Allen. I don't know if you recall her story. She was a Pennsylvania mom who was driving through New Jersey. So something like that, a lot of people in the gun industry don't want that to happen. And national reciprocity would prevent that. So I think Donald Trump will get a very big boost from the gun community if a lot of the Second Amendment bills pass. The problem is, we kind of do have a spineless Republican Party right now who won't bring it.
And interim elections.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Elections are this year. So, you have a bunch of spineless Republicans who won't bring any kind of real gun rights laws to the table in fear of I don't know if it's because they have the same mentality as the Democrats and the liberals and they want to ban all the guns, or they're afraid that they're going to lose voters. Well, whatever it is, I don't see.
The topic is too controversial. They're just not sure. They're really not sure which way their constituents are going to move with it. Mostly people move with the Second Amendment. They're just a little quieter about it. The liberals are just a little bit louder. And I think that they just don't even want to get into the topic, and they are spineless about it. Eric Royce last week did tell me In the Crosshairs that Donald Trump said publicly that it's not happening this year. What do you think about that?
I'm not surprised at all, especially like you said, you're coming to midterm elections this year. So
yeah,
I'm not surprised that it's not happening. I heard Donald Trump speak at the NRA convention last year. I know he spoke this past year, but I was running around with doing business and stuff at the NRA show, so I didn't get a chance to hear him speak. But, you know, I understand that it's not going to happen this year because of midterm elections. I just still think that's a pretty lame excuse that it's not going to happen. I think it's something that's very important. I think it's something, you know, the whole concept of shall not be infringed, I agree with it wholeheartedly, and this is an infringement. Unfortunately, there is going to be infringements as much as I don't want there to be. And something like the national reciprocity not allowing me to carry over state lines is a tough decision. I mean, I go to Chicago quite often, and the fact that I can't even, you know, bring a firearm. I'm going to New Jersey in the next few weeks for some business. And I mean, the thought of even touching a gun in New Jersey scares the hell out of me.
You can't. You're not allowed. It's banned. Firearms are just banned in New York. Just consider that. Just consider it that way.
Exactly. So, you know,
that bad.
I think national reciprocity will be a gigantic boost for Trump if he can get it passed. But it comes along with having a Republican Congress and Senate who will be willing to do it. So it'll be very interesting to see how the next year plays out.
It is, and I'm going to concur with you. I do support national reciprocity, and along the same lines. I did write an article about Shannon Allen a few years ago when it happened for Human Events. And in her case, she was a Pennsylvania concealed carry permit holder, and she traveled, you know, right into New Jersey from Pennsylvania, you know, maybe a few minutes. She was like going in and out, and she had her firearm legally in her glove compartment. So when she was pulled over by law enforcement, she notified the officer that she was armed legally and that her firearm was in the glove compartment. And with that, she was arrested. And the complications of being arrested, of course, you know, it's like a tumbling problem because you can't get to work, you lose your job, you get a bad name, you got a mugshot, you know, all these crazy things happen to you. She didn't do anything, you know, frankly, she didn't do anything wrong. So that's one of the reasons why the reciprocity on the federal level is so important, in my opinion, too. And also, you know, the idea is that when people want to travel across state lines, and it happens frequently, it happens, you know, pleasure, employment, there's so many reasons. I mean, we're a country of 50 states, so we want to go in and out of our states, and we want to be able to protect ourselves anywhere we go. And there are states that have reciprocity between each other. And that's separate agreements. But I think our cause is saying, look, it takes travelers who have concealed carry permits, and they want to travel. It takes us weeks and weeks and months. You got to read up. You got to see what law is this? What state? Where am I going to be tomorrow? How am I going to do this? You know, you're there like all confused. You're like, you know what? I'm not going to go. I don't feel safe. I mean, this is like criminal. You know, I should be able to use so it's convenient. I mean, we're not asking the federal government to, you know, make a federal case about the whole thing with all these restrictions, and, you know, they don't have to really talk about it for that long. You know, it's just very clear. It's just let the states have reciprocity so that there's one law that's fair. That we can all agree on when we're traveling with our firearms, that will not result in somebody getting arrested.
Right.
I think that's very fair.
I agree.
Nothing wrong with that at all. And I also think, you know, it'll get passed next year. I want to get your opinion about the media in general. One of the reasons why I decided to focus this program on Second Amendment is it was right after the Parkland shooting in Florida that I was offered to do the show, and I was just getting so angry and just upset over the media's constant negative about guns. And they were sort of blaming like this boogeyman, the NRA, and I'm an NRA member. You're an NRA member. We're not criminals. You're not a criminal. I'm not a criminal. But people are looking at me like, you're bad. Why is this happening? It's very frustrating. So what I wanted to do is bring on people to talk about the positive side and to let you all know that we're not monsters, that Second Amendment is our fundamental right. But the media, the onslaught is just killing me. I mean, is this fake news? What's going on here?
I don't think it's fake news anymore. I think they're just straight up lying. I mean, I think they're trying to push an agenda, and they don't care about just spewing all these lies, because even if they get caught, they get, a slap on the wrist. It's not, you'll have one person say something about Donald Trump and, they're hailed the hero, but when Roseanne Barr, and don't take this the wrong way, I do not agree with Roseanne at all what she did, but it was a very poor judgment on her part. But if someone says something against the liberal mindset, it's that person is thrown under the bus and their careers are ruined. So, I think obviously there's a double standard.
She apologized immediately. She made a public apology. And I thought that was fair of her. Where on the other side, the liberals, they never apologize. They say these awful things.
Yeah.
And they don't even apologize for it, yet they're hailed like some kind of hero, like you said.
No, for sure. And it's interesting to see that the double standard is there, and it's so easy to spot out. It's not even like they're trying to hide it. You just constantly having the media just spew all these lies about so many different things, and unfortunately their I'll use the word fan base, but they're following, CNN, MSNBC, when they say something, when they say Trump is Hitler, all of a sudden you have all of these liberal sheep going off and like, Trump is Hitler, Trump is Hitler. I'm like you're an idiot. Like you guys are just idiots. Like straight up idiots. Do your own research, open a book, check history. The same people who are calling Trump Hitler are also saying that guns should be taken away from the civilian market. I'm like, right, so you want the president of the United States, who you think is Hitler, to have control of all the weaponry. Like, it's just a disease.
I think so too, and it's completely out of hand. Last week, the big controversy was the president's press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She went out to dinner. She made reservations to the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, and she wasn't making a political statement. She just kind of she made reservations for dinner. And I just think the audacity of a public restaurant owner to say, hey, you know what? I don't like your political philosophy, and you're gonna have to go. And 4 people got to get up and leave. I think that's discrimination. I think it goes beyond just the rhetoric. I think that's outright discrimination. Could a store owner of a restaurant tell a black person, I'm sorry, I really don't like your philosophy. You got to go. They can't do that. That's discrimination. What do you think?
I'm coming from the mindset of, a business has the right to do what they want to do. Now, the beauty of that is it's really the market that dictates whether a business will be successful or not. So if there were people who, frequented the Red Hen, who are pro-Trump supporters, and they feel like, you know what, that was absolutely disgraceful. We will no longer frequent that establishment. Then do it. Don't go there, and they will take massive hits, and they will end up closing their doors. I mean, that's the beauty of the free market. So, you know, I'm an Orthodox Jew, so I've never been asked to leave a non-kosher restaurant for my religion because I don't go to non-kosher restaurants. But you know, if I would get turned away for something for being Jewish, how would I react? I mean, who knows? Would I sue? Would I not? I mean, thank God I've never had to be in that position. But, you know, like I said, if, for example, take Chick-fil-A, right? I know Bill de Blasio in New York sometime last year, early in 2017, said that we should boycott Chick-fil-A in New York or something along those lines. And that month was Chick-fil-A's greatest month ever because everybody came out and went to Chick-fil-A. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what happens. You want to try, you know, turning away part of your clientele because of their political beliefs, sexual beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever it is. Well, then you have to prepare to suffer the consequences.
It's almost the same thing that happens to the NRA. Because when the NRA is blamed for things, the sale of guns actually go up, which is awesome. So people, you know, buy guns every time. They're sort of fearful when they think that their guns are going to be confiscated. People want to go out and buy them. I wanted to get back to what you were talking about right from the beginning, about your parents and how you grew up. We're a political family, and they were shocked, you know, when you bought a Glock, when they found out that you bought a Glock. How do they feel now about you being a Second Amendment advocate publicly?
So, you know, my parents, my father's funny. My father has now become very, very conservative. I think before it was, like I said, they were apolitical. They just didn't care. But now, you know, my father is quite conservative.
Interesting.
Yeah, he'll call me.
I think you persuaded him a little bit on that.
I mean, I will never, I mean, I never push them, or even like my wife, for example. My wife also very apolitical, but when it comes time to vote, she's like, well, who am I voting for? I'm like, I'm not telling you who you're voting for. I said, this candidate believes is this, and this. This one believes is this, and this. She goes, oh, well, I'm going to go with that candidate. I'm like, well, you're a conservative in your mind. So, like, just go with the guy. So I think that happened with my parent. Well, at least with my father. He became, you know, quite conservative now. My mom still is one of those people who won't talk about who she voted for, and we never bring up politics. And I'm okay with that. But, you know, when my parents come to visit me in Texas, you know, I do walk around in the house with my gun open, and, you know, they know I have a just about 9-year-old son. I take him shooting all the time now, and they know I do. And they actually are very proud of what I'm accomplishing and what I'm standing for. I don't think they would ever buy a gun. But
even Dad, who's Mr. Conservative now.
Well, because he's married to my mom, so
she would never let it happen.
Yeah, my mom would never let it happen. Truth of the matter is, I don't think my father would want one. I think he supports the Second Amendment now, but I don't think he necessarily cares to own a gun. But my parents are proud of what I'm standing up for, what I believe in, and how I'm not ashamed. You know, I'm in the middle. My Twitter handle and my Instagram handle are the Pew Pew Jew, and I'm opening up a business. I'm going to be having T-shirts and patches and mugs, all based on this persona of the Pew Pew Jew, because my parents see what I'm trying to do. I am trying to give a voice to the Jewish world in the gun community, because up until now, Jews get a pretty bad rap of being very anti-gun, and in many cases, it's very true. Especially when you have people like Dianne Feinstein and Bloomberg and all these super liberal members of the U.S. government who are Jewish,
Right.
but I'm trying to give that voice back to pro-gun Jews, and my parents see that and are very proud of it.
Are you making inroads into doing that? I think it's awesome, and it's a great idea. It reminds me of Ken Blanchard. He was a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago. And his persona is Black Man with a Gun.
Yep.
And he travels all over the country, and he's a speaker and a radio host and a TV host, and he does a lot of great things. And it reminds me of what you're doing, because he's absolutely reaching out to his community. Who are traditionally not pro-Second Amendment. So he's opening up the door for them too. So I think that what you're doing is really great. Being that I'm from New York, I do know, there is a good number of conservative Jews that I know that are very pro-Second Amendment. They might be a small minority in New York, but they're active, they're loud. They would absolutely appreciate a spokesperson like yourself. So I want to hear what kind of feedback you're getting then from your community with what you've been working on.
So my community is very funny. I've been getting a lot of support, but like a lot of Jews, even Orthodox Jews, they don't care about it. Meaning they're like, okay, it's cool what you're doing, but like, we're not gun people, so we don't care. I do have some very close friends who, they all, some Jewish friends here in Texas who also carry, and they're loving it. They're like, hey man, we're your friends, we want free t-shirts. I'm like, stop being such a Jew, you're gonna pay for them. But no, I have friends who are very pro it, and have been really helping me and supporting me along my way. And I'm not as far as Ken Blanchard has been in making inroads, because I've only been in the firearms industry for about a year and a half since my first book came out. So, but I'm making my way into the world, into the Second Amendment world, into the gun world, and I've been connected with a lot of really amazing people who have really helped me along the way. Alan Gottlieb in the Second Amendment Foundation. They took me under their wing right away, and they have just been a real blessing to me, helping me with many things. I know
Alan too.
Yeah.
He's gonna publish my book, I hope.
Okay.
So are you going to the Gun Rights Policy Conference in September? It's in Chicago.
So I am, hopefully.
Okay,
I just need to raise a little money for a plane ticket.
Yeah.
I spoke at last year's Gun Rights Policy Conference, which was
nice.
Which was absolutely an amazing experience. I was asked, I don't know if you're familiar with AMCON.
What is it for? What does it stand for?
I guess ammo convention, but it's basically
okay.
It's the day before the GRPC. So GRPC is Saturday, Sunday. AMCON is that Friday at the hotel, with many people who I'll send you the information if you're going to be at the GRPC. Many people in the Second Amendment media world, like all the people from the Polite Society podcast, and Cheryl Todd from Gun Freedoms Radio, Amanda Sufcool, I'm the Target. They're all there, and it's like a 10-hour seminar with tons of different speakers about different aspects about how to monetize your podcast, how to interview guests. We have, what's his name is a big speaker there who's great, Mark Walters.
Oh yeah, I know him too. Yeah.
He's there.
I spoke at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Tampa a few years ago.
Right. So,
I was a speaker. Yeah.
All these people are speaking at this thing, AMCON, on Friday. So I was asked to speak on self-promotion.
Excellent.
So I just need to raise I'm
gonna really try and be there, and I'll let the listeners know. It's in September. You could find out information at the Second Amendment Foundation website, which is saf.org. And we'll go ahead and list these sites also with the article that's going to be attached with the video. So we'll be able to, in fact, while I have you, tell us where we can find you, where we can contact you, where we can follow you.
So right now, the best place to buy my books is Amazon. I am selling really funky Pew Pew Jew patches.
I love it. I think that's great.
I'm selling. I'm in the middle of creating a Pew Pew Jew store. Hopefully that should be up by the end of the summer. But I'm selling patches on my website, which is yehudaremer.com.
Cool.
And you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram and Twitter, my handle is the Pew Pew Jew, and Facebook is just look up my name, Yehuda Remer. Okay,
perfect. And I want to say something to your community, or for those people out there that maybe are indifferent and they just don't care about the Second Amendment. I want to say to you that that's okay. If you don't want to purchase a firearm, if you don't want to have a firearm as a means to protect yourself, that is your prerogative. I don't want to force you to do that either. But what I am going to ask you to do is just don't take it away from me. Okay, so I would never try to intrude on your First Amendment right, for instance. So, I wouldn't go, your speech might offend me. I don't know, it might offend me, but I'm not going to go and try to pass laws to prevent you from speaking, because that's your First Amendment right. So in the same venue, it's our Second Amendment right to protect ourselves in any means possible, as well as a God-given right, in my opinion. So go ahead, don't have a gun. Sometimes, I'm in public and I'm not carrying, I'm not armed. But I live in the state of Florida, so I know about 50% of the people are concealed carry holders. So for me, I already feel safe because I know somebody, if I'm in a big public place, I can have a pretty good guess that somebody there is armed. And I feel protected that somebody is. It doesn't have to be me. So go ahead and don't buy firearms if you don't want to. Just don't take it away from me.
I tell that to them all the time. I tell all my friends, I'm like, hey, people in the gun industry, they don't care if you don't want to buy a firearm. They don't care if you're anti-guns. As long as you don't try to take them away from us, we're okay with that.
Right.
So
that is true.
I agree.
Yeah, and don't believe and the other thing, they don't believe the media sometimes, because they have skewed data, and we know that for a fact. So we've done studies on their studies, and oftentimes their data is skewed to come to a conclusion, that just guns are bad. But when you look at the data, when you really look at the data, you figure out that they really aren't. They're not the boogeyman I think the media portrays it to be. So do your research. And a lot of people are converted just by going to the range and trying it out, picking up the firearm and trying it out, because actually, a lot of people enjoy it just for sport. It really is fun. It's exhilarating. You learn something. You have to have patience. We're all responsible adults, and we handle these things responsibly. It's not like I'm going to get into like a 14-wheeler and drive a truck if I've never driven a truck before, right? I'm not going to take any chances with anything that could potentially be dangerous. So it's the same thing when you go to the range. Everything is careful. Everything is confined. You can try it out. Try it out. You might like it.
More than going to the range that you might be converting, or you might like it, or it's empowering.
Yeah.
That's
right.
one thing that I enjoy. Not that it's empowering that like I'm better than you empowering. It's more like it builds your self-confidence. When you can go to a range and, at 25 feet, 50 feet, whatever it is, do a grouping of 2-3 inches. It's very self-empowering, and it makes you feel good about yourself that you've accomplished something, and I love it. So yeah, it's good times.
I think so too. It's an ego boost almost, not in a bad way, but you do feel it is empowering, and you do feel like you're accomplishing something important. And it's for me, I find it to be really fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing about it. Okay, so we're winding down at the end of the program, Yehuda, but I want you to have the last word.
Basically, what I tell everyone whenever they give me the last word is that in terms of gun safety, what parents need to understand more, or what most people need to understand, a gun is nothing more than a tool. And it's how you use the tool that will determine the outcome of a situation. Just like we keep cooking knives on the counter, and just like we teach our little ones not to touch a hot stove or oven, same thing. It's same thing with a firearm. You teach them proper safety protocols at an early age. The likeliness of an accident happening later on definitely is diminished.
I think so too. That's great advice. It's great advice for all parents. And the kids learn something. Good education.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Yehuda, for being on the show. And it's so nice meeting you. It's our first engagement.
Yes.
I'm going to really try and be at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in September in Chicago, and hopefully we'll get to meet then again.
Sounds good.
Thanks again.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
I always wave. Bye.
Hey.